Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builder Supply. In this video is to bring you a closer look at the Stanley number 327 wardrobe pivot or pivot set. This is in the US10 finish. Should be called 639 would be a better way to call this because satin bronze is US10. Satin bronze is also 612. But satin bronze when it's on steel, satin bronze on bronze is 612. Satin bronze on steel is 639. US10 doesn't tell us the base material. So yeah, sure, US10. These pivots have been manufactured for so many decades, they wouldn't use the relatively more recent BHMA system of calling it out in terms of finish. But I would call them 639 because that means solid, that means that it is a satin bronze finish with a lacquer over a steel base material. Okay, just to be clear so you know what you're dealing with in terms of base material. Now the 327, this is what's called a wardrobe set. Okay, and they are completely reversible in the sense that you will get a top and a bottom. The top and the bottom are not the same hardware, but you can certainly reverse them. It can be for a left-hand reverse door or a right-hand reverse door, not a problem. And as a result, we're really only going to just show one piece in this video because the other side is literally identical. It's going to include screws. They'll be in a complementary finish. And the Stanley 327 is going to be available in different finishes, and let's address that now. Then we're going to get into the cut sheet, the installation instructions. So these can be ordered in 26 polished chrome, 26D satin chrome, US10 satin bronze. It's a nice satin bronze finish. 10BL, which is a dark oxidized satin bronze. It's going to be like your oil rub type color. US3 for polished brass, and then a prime coat. They can do a USP. If you're going to paint them, they can do that as well. They can accommodate. It's going to include your screws, as I had just shown you. It's going to include your installation instructions, and they're down below this video as well in terms of a link. It's a pretty long document. Don't be intimidated by it. It's just a lot of... It's no big deal. And we're going to go over it in this video. I want to make sure that the document that I have attached to this is the most up-to-date that is available. It does indeed appear to be the case. If you notice the date on the lower left-hand corner, when I say up-to-date, it is the most up-to-date version, 6 of 77. That is certainly going to be the month and the year of this hardware has not changed in, well gosh, 50 years, I suppose. And it's really a testament to the fact that it's a timeless piece of hardware. And I'm very partial to the Stanley line of pivots, and they do have they have a line of pivots, and there are an offering. There are links below this video, related products showing all of the Stanley pivots, which you'll be able to get into. Before we move into its cut sheet, its installation instructions, etc., US10 satin bronze. Ideal for overlay doors, 1 3/8 to 1 3/4 thick, not exceeding 150 pounds. So let's dissect that. Overlay. That literally means that the door is going to, rather than being inset, is going to overlay the face of the opening. Okay? It's going to surface mount, so to speak. It's going to go right on the face of something. Could you make this flush with a wall? You could. You'd have to, do some carpentry to make that work. But we'll talk about different pivots in a moment as well. They can handle 1 3/8 or 1 3/4 thick doors. That's nice because doors are commonly 1 3/8 or 1 3/4. It's not going to work on something that's going to be skinny, necessarily like 3/4 inch, even though it can work. It's just your door is going to reside in this area here, and having something 3/4 may not be appropriate for this type of hardware. So you can see you'll get right to 1 3/4 before you're going to hit that spindle or the rivet pin, the bushing, whatever you'd like to call it. Certainly 1 3/8 is going to work. 150 pounds. Well, even a 3080 door is not going to exceed 150 pounds. So you'd be able to hang a really heavy door, and you'll be able to do it in such a way where you have great value. These pivots are not expensive. When you compare them to other pivots that will hang a 150-pound door, they're half the cost. The only downside of such a pivot would be the fact that you don't have an opportunity for an intermediate pivot. So if you have any bow in your door, you have any giddy up, you have any problem like that at all, there's no way to fix that using this hardware. And in fact, manufacturers very likely will state in their warranty that the door has to be, I'm sure that they'll state it, they may be the rope by which they hang you with if the door is warped, that the door has to be properly hung to begin with. And that certainly includes an intermediate pivot or hinges in the middle of the door. Top and bottom only is going to be classified as improperly hung. So if your door bows, and 1 out of 10 doors are going to be warped every time, if not more, you might need to think about the specification of this hardware to mitigate that sort of a problem. May not be an issue. You might have a construction of a door that is not something that's going to warp. You might have structural lumber, timber strand, LSL, faced with a laminate. Probably not going to warp at all. Even if it was submerged in water, it's not going to warp. You might have, construction of a door. I've built tongue and groove face doors for sliding panels, and I did have trouble with warp. Well, I was able to disguise 3/16 angle on the doors, and that brought those doors right straight. They were heavy, but they were incredibly straight, incredibly beautiful when they were done, etc. Ideal for wardrobe doors, sure. You want to have, access to a wardrobe. Obviously, that will work. Bearings take vertical and lateral loads. Okay, that's just going to be a reference to the construction of the bearing that's inside of here. This is going to be very tolerant of the door being moved this way. It's going to be very tolerant of the weight of the door pushing down on it. Designed for mullion or face frame mounting. And that is going to be, and we'll get into that in a moment, but quickly here, obviously face frame mounting is where your door is going to be out here like that. Well, a mullion style mount, I would think you could make work, forgive me, you got a couple of blocks of wood here that you're going to attach your hardware to. Okay? So a mullion style mount, I would think that you could make that happen as well. Doors can be installed floor to ceiling. Well, that's true. The fact of the matter is this hardware, your door is going to come right to here, right? You don't have that much room before you can hit the ceiling. So your door can literally, what they call, run floor to ceiling. Conversely, down at the floor, just going to have that room, and the door is going to sit right on top of this plate. And by the way, these weigh about 1 3/4 pound per set, or at least they do with their screws and packaging. Screw holes allow for vertical and horizontal adjustment. They indeed do. When you're installing this material to your jamb or to your door, let's look at the door first. You're going to install it in this slotted hole first to make your adjustment. Once you know you're perfect, then pre-drill and set your permanent hole. Conversely, on your face frame or on your mullion, same thing. Go right here, make any adjustment that you need. It's probably going to be sitting on the floor, so probably not too much adjustment. But then your 2 final screws. Okay, you can hold that up, and I've got people that have held the door up off the floor, and that's certainly not going to be an issue. I don't know that I'd want that sort of weight resting on what is, in essence, 2 screws. You might be able to set that 3rd screw so that you can take advantage of it as well. But this is meant to be sitting on the floor. That's how I've always seen it installed. Doors can be open to 180 degrees, you betcha. That will go all the way out. It's going to bring that door out quite substantially as well. And that's really where doing a mullion mount or an inset mount is going to give you the ability to handle that. Because your door is going to sit in here, and in your mind's eye, if you just watch how that's going to travel, I mean, I'm immediately taking my outside corner of my door away from the jamb. Now it's over here. Continue to take it out. Now my door resides in here. I don't touch that jamb at all. And that could be kind of cool because you could run like chair rail. Not chair rail. There's a term I'm thinking of. Very small, thin, 5/8 tall bead that might be really cool to have on your doors. That might look like that sort of trim right across. You'll see that certainly in older homes. You'll see trim work in custom homes. You'll see that as well. So you can run that all the way around. And having the ability to set those doors in nice serves the purpose of helping disguise the doors. People will use these wardrobe pivots because they want to hang a big door and they don't want to see the hardware. Period. End of sentence. So that's where the Stanley product will really come in and be very effective. And again, they're non-handed. Flip them over either which way, doesn't matter, which is really nice. There's a link below this video to a document called Cut Sheet. The Cut Sheet is a summary of everything I just said. Will give us some dimensional properties of the item as well for your review. We'll also then give you a cross-section of what the application would look like, and you'll notice that they show the item held off the floor. However you go about doing it is how you do it. You hold it off the floor or you don't. I have certainly seen these sitting on the floor. I've certainly seen them held off the floor as well. Now, let's move into, and there are, again, those links below this video to the other Stanley pivots that we have, but a quick overview of them. And there is a catalog cut page that will show them. You've got your 340, and the 340 is a very similar set of pivots, except that it's intended to be attached to the same sort of application. You need to have some sort of a stop involved for the 340 to work. The point is the product catalog is there allowing you to look at these. The 341 is kind of a hybrid of where you mount it, but it will be jam mounted. So that's a nice one. You don't see those that often, but they're less common, but you do see them. The 327, I have to say, the 340 is the most common. The 327 after that. The thinner door, if you're going to get sub 1 3/8, you'll be looking at the 342 pivot versus the 327. So they have those 4 different types of pivots that are there for your review. Okay. Now let's get into the installation instructions. Let's take a stab at the installation instructions. First of all, step 1, and I'm looking at them here, and they will certainly be included. The instructions given are for an overlay installation using a 327 pivot hinge set mounted right-handed, also known as left-hand reverse. The 327 is reversible, non-handed. Left-hand installation is the opposite. When they refer to everything in this drawing, they're going to be referring to the fact they're going to be referring to a right-hand installation. So if you're doing the opposite door hand, in your mind's eye, just flip everything over symmetrically, like book matched the opposite. Step 2, face of mullion. Okay, so that is going to be your opening or your face of the door. They're calling it a mullion. Wall mount, mullion mount. A mullion is just going to be a strip of material that can be mounted in front of a couple of doors or between 2 doors. It's a vertical structure called a mullion. Horizontal positioning will vary with mullion width. 1 1/4 wide mullion with mullion leaves centered horizontally is the minimum width recommended. 1 1/4 wide mullion with mullion leaves centered horizontally is the minimum width recommended. So what they're saying is, be mindful that if you're installing this onto a mullion application, so think of a wardrobe, you may not have just a big wall. You might have that strip of material that you're going to hang the unit to. And what they're saying is if you're going to set up a door or a bank of doors, you're going to want 1 1/4 wide, or thick, I guess, mullion so that you can get all your doors placed nice and symmetrical all the way down. Amount of overlay of the door will vary with mullion width and the design requirements. 1 1/4 1/16 overlay on the hinge side is minimum. I think that's 1 1/16. 1 3/16, forgive me. The amount that the door is going to hang over the mullion, measured from the edge of the door to the inside face of the mullion. Laying all of this out, how wide is your opening in terms of where the mullion lies or where the mullions all lie out? The net thickness of all your doors, the net width of all your doors, is crucial, so that you lay that out, order your door sizes accordingly. And I will literally take time and sketch it out. And then I will double check it. And if I'm responsible for all of it, I will certainly triple check it, if not more. Step 3 is mortising the door on the top and bottom. If your design calls out for a minimum of clearance. And what they're meaning by that is, you can see in step 3 how you're going to make that L-shaped notch. And that L-shaped notch is literally going to account for, now let's do it the way that it's being shown. Maybe it's better reverse for you. Being shown for this area here, okay? The 3/16 is going to come in the sense that your door really can't exceed the top of the hardware. Otherwise, it's going to hit over here, okay? So it would be logical that the depth of the route is going to be equal to that leaf thickness. Well, let's test that. And the router is the second best friend of the carpenter, in my opinion. The best friend is the caliper. I put my caliper on this material, and lo and behold, it's 0.196. So that is a 90th of an inch heavy on 3/16. So the fact of the matter is, if you want to suck that door up to the top as tight as possible, you're going to mortise it 3/16 deep, and that's going to bring your door all but flush to the top of this hardware. Okay. They want 3-inch wide, and let's do a reality check for the base. Indeed, they want 1.125, and that's going to relate to this, right? Yep, that's spot on. And then they're going to want a 3/4 inch, well, I guess you could call it back set from the back side of the door. Well, forgive me, that makes perfect sense. 3/4 inch, because this is surface mounted to the back side. So 3/4 inch is going to be right positive where you need to be. Okay. So what have we done? This document that was published 50 years ago, it's accurate. We always check templates, especially before you do something for the first time. Because if I've looked at 10,000 templates, well, if I've looked at 500 templates, one of them's wrong. Incomplete, not finished. The factory is very happy that you've pointed out a mistake to them, so be mindful to check it. Now, moving forward, they state the mortising may be eliminated if approximately a 1/2-inch clearance at top and bottom is acceptable. If you're good with the door, with there being a 1/2-inch door gap at the bottom and the top, don't mortise it. Just set the darn door right on top of the hardware. Then in this case, you can visualize where that 1/2 inch is going to come in. Your door is going to set there, and your bottom of your pivot's going to be just heavy on 1/2 inch. You want to shrink that down to about 5/16, then you go ahead and mortise it. So however you like or want to go about doing that, that's according to the design requirements. Step 5, so let's back up. Step 3, what they're saying in step 3 is do that at the top and bottom. Do that same prep that we just detailed and with our tape measure verified as accurate. In step 4, you can visualize how that all works. You will then apply your hardware to the door, place door leaves in mortise, mark and pre-drill at center of elongated holes. We talked about that, so you can adjust. Top mullion leaf, swing out of the way. Bottom mullion leaf, swing out of the way. Okay, sure, that makes perfect sense. Now, step 5 really illustrates that mullion concept. It can also be the face of a wall, or it can be your jam piece, your mullion piece, whatever terminology you might call it. Step 5, to allow for vertical adjustment and sufficient clearance under the door, the bottom mullion leaf should be mounted at least a 1/4 inch off the floor. If carpet or other special floor coverings are used, additional clearance should be allowed equal to their thickness. And that's what's really great about these older installation instructions. They're right to the point. I've read catalogs that were published more than 100 years ago, and they're just concise. Written by people who know the job, specifying it for people who know the job. And it's brilliant the way that they do it. So what they're saying there is, hold it up a 1/4 inch to allow for a sufficient vertical adjustment. What they're saying is, no floor is level. Maybe yours is, not a problem. You might want to check that before you decide to rest it on the floor. But you open that door out, and if it's a bathroom scenario, your floor could be pitched back towards whatever is on the inside of this opening, right? It could be by design. So you want to hang it up, just hold it up off the floor so that your door doesn't scrape on the floor at all. And that's where they're driving at with that. Apply bottom hinge to face of mullion using the center of the elongated hole. Be sure to line up with previously drawn vertical line. So that vertical line is what they were referring to back in your margin of step 2. Okay. And you're going to lay all that out depending on what your overlay is with your 1 3/16 minimum. Okay. Step 5 does absolutely state, hold it off the floor a 1/4 inch. Okay. No problem. Step 6 is to do the same thing with your top pivot. Position top hinge mullion leaf on mullion at point from top of bottom hinge, which is equal to the door height less 5 7/16. Okay. So, what they're telling us here is step 4 was not screw the hardware to the door. Step 4 was to mark the hardware position of the elongated hole on the door. Step 6 tells us now get that hardware installed on your mullion or your wall, whatever it is. Position the top hinge mullion leaf on mullion at a point from top of the bottom hinge, which is equal to the door height less 5 7/16, assuming that you've done the mortise as they've mentioned earlier. And if you have not, the note is there. 3/16, 3/16, that's going to be 6/16, 3/8. The difference between 5 7/16 and 5 1/16 in the note is 3/8. Again, it's nice to be able to prove that math both ways. So if you're surface mounting the material, you'll adjust, make it 5 1/16 less of your actual door height. Apply screw in the center of the elongated hole. Before tightening, raise the top hinge to the uppermost position and temporarily tighten the hole. Okay, sure. Then get your door in step 7. Open bottom leaf door to 180-degree position. Locate bottom door mortise on bottom hinge door leaf. Apply screw through the elongated hole into the pre-drilled hole. In the same way, locate top door mortise on top hinge door leaf by dropping top jam leaf. Apply screw into the pre-drilled hole. Okay, so that's just going to be swung out and around your door. Obviously, when you're placing that door on that bottom hardware, you're going to want to have it shimmed. You're not going to want to have that single hole holding the weight of a 150-pound door potential. Step 8, make final door alignment laterally. Any sort of vertical? Well, vertical correction, lateral correction as well from step 7, where you now have the door hung. If substantial horizontal adjustment is necessary, additional mortising of the door or refitting of the door or repositioning of the hardware may be required. Apply remaining screws. Tighten all remaining screws to complete the installation. That's it. It's very simple. It is simple. The first time it's probably not, but where the success will pay off is in the thinking through the work prior to doing it. What's the size of the door? What height do I have to have? How does my hardware work in relationship to all of that? Do I understand it? Does anything seem wrong? And if anything doesn't seem exactly perfect, don't proceed. Because you realize too late, that's why it didn't seem right, because it was not right. And that's important to proceed in that fashion. I am a fan, as I had said earlier, of these Stanley pivots because they're capable and they're inexpensive and they solve the problem. No one really has a set of, not that no one has a set of pivots like this, but I'd really have to dig. I'd have to probably go outside of a domestic manufacturer to find something that would relate to this. You can, again, go with material that will be at least double the cost, if not triple the cost, to do the same work. But you know what? I've got 15 doors to hang, and $100 is $100 per opening. I'm pleased with the finish. The satin bronze. My lights may not be very adequately portraying the satin bronze, but it is a faithful satin bronze finish. The name Stanley is synonymous with incredible high-quality hinges. I don't do a lot of Stanley in relationship to other manufacturers of hinges, but they are my favorite when it comes to fit and finish. Every time I have the opportunity to review a Stanley hinge, I always marvel at how just simply good the hardware looks every single time. And as a result of that, I continue to promote the product because it's not easy. The manufacturing process is not something that is equally mastered by other manufacturers, and I know that because of all the reviews of hinges that I've done. There are some that are far worse than others, and many that are better than some. The point of the matter is, I'm partial to Stanley's because you can really tell from their fit and finish that they know what they're doing. Finally, there's a link below this video to the manufacturer's page where you can pull up not only all of the Stanley products that we sell, but a link to the manufacturer's website, as well as a link to the full product catalog. Many and several full product catalogs are there as well. Not only the core product catalog, but other product catalogs as it pertains to their detention hardware. They make some epically heavy hinges used for the detention industry. Sliding and folding door hardware is there as well. Low energy operator stuff. Stanley has gotten into many other product lines and many other businesses in the last 5 or 10 years, and they continue to evolve. And they're still an old school hardware company where you can still call Stanley and talk to a hinge person, and that's appreciated. Any questions on the Stanley number 327 in a US10 finish or any other Stanley product, please feel free to reach out to us. And thank you.